My name is Chris Scriven. I'd like to welcome you to our second episode of Grounded, where we will continue to rely on our shared roots, shared civility, and shared love of community and country to ground us while we engage together in honest, reflective conversations about how we have come to find ourselves in one of the most divisive and disorienting times in the history of our country. I'd like to start out by saying thank you to all of you who have expressed interest and support for the show, and a special thank you to those of you joining us for the first time. I'd like to be very clear about my intentions with Grounded. I intend to do the following. Number one, deal in verifiable facts with vetted resources. Number two, offer few opinions. Number three, ask a lot of questions. And number four, incorporate all of the above into an open and active dialogue with any and all members of our community in a thoughtful, civil, and respectful manner at a controlled pace best suited to allow for the verification or disqualification of contested information. I'd like to start out with some questions. How do we see our individual roles in democracy? What do we expect of each other as citizens of our country? What, if any, are our responsibilities to our country and our Constitution as citizens who enjoy all the benefits of a democratic society based on adherence to our Constitution and the rule of law? How does our current level of personal engagement and sacrifice to preserve our democracy square with the efforts of previous generations who willingly stepped up to defend our country when existential threats were apparently more easy to see? Is that an odd question to ask, particularly while being recorded on a local cable access program? Is it an appropriate question to consider at the present moment? Is it appropriate to discuss these questions in public? Is it unbecoming to ask our friends and family or neighbors and local leaders to weigh in on these and other serious issues that affect us all on a daily basis? While these issues ultimately affect us all where we live together, they are definitely not generated here, where we live and shop and eat and walk and celebrate and mourn together. What are we to do if we observe lawless and extrajudicial action taken by a weeks-old presidential administration to strip the authority from Congress, the first branch of our government, to control and authorize spending? What are we to do if our country is taken over by an unelected person who just by coincidence happens to be the richest guy in the world, who goes on to blow up our government in ways that will likely affect the funding programs like Medicaid, public education, including students with disabilities and IEPs, any young person taking out a loan for college or vocational program or law school, programs for food assistance, heating assistance, all will be affected. Do we understand the function of USAID and that it constitutes less than 1% of the federal budget? Do we consider the importance in terms of our long-term national security to fund programs that allow us to develop and maintain good relationships with unstable countries around the world by providing resources to help fight malaria or prevent AIDS? Are we aware of the term flooding the zone with excrement? See Steve Bannon. And a plan in early 2020 to generate mistrust in our elections as a means to discredit the presidential election results if the Republican candidate were to lose. And certainly not least among Trump's transgressions to this point of his second administration, his pardoning of over 150 convicted felons and the commutations of the sentences of others for their actions on January 6th is, in my mind, reprehensible. Let's stop and think. What if the officers that serve our community were on the Capitol defending our democracy on January 6th? What if they were in the position of having to hold the line and being overwhelmed by insurrectionists, by lawless followers of President Trump? Many lost their lives, many were maimed, many lost fingers, many had their eyes gouged out. What if those were our officers from our community? Could we look away from the pardons and the commutations? My guess is we couldn't. So what I'm suggesting is we shouldn't. I'm not here trying to offend anyone or quote unquote own anyone, but I am here to challenge my community to think about and discuss these things. The same community that's been there for me at every point in my life to look at our current situation, but maybe a different lens, with different mental models and constructs that might allow us to see things a little differently. When you change the way you look at things, things you look at change. Grounded is designed to proceed in a very intentional way at a very intentional pace, a way that prioritizes civility, respect, and an open mind at a pace where facts can be verified with credible sources. I would like to offer some new ways of looking at old problems and maybe some old ways of looking at new ones. Based on the 2024 presidential election results in Whitman, 50% of the voters did not want Trump to be president again. and even 45% of the Hanson voters rejected him. Therefore, I want to hear from our elected officials on the concerns the 45 to 50% of us have after the first 2 weeks of the new administration. Whether we are on the right or on the left, Republicans, Democrats, or Independents, we do share a common threat to our country and all our freedoms. That common enemy is disinformation and the misinformation that is compounded by the speed at which this false information travels and influences the way we see ourselves and the way we see our future. I know we all share the same hopes for our children and grandchildren, nieces and nephews, to grow, to be healthy, and maintain and enjoy all the rights and freedoms provided to us through our Constitution and our rule of law. But yet, we can't seem to agree on basic, fundamental facts. Disinformation that is either constructed, embellished, or outright created by private corporations and foreign actors who want to be able to predict and in turn control us as much as they can to serve their interests in power and wealth, has us where we are today. I would certainly love to be convinced that democracy is not in jeopardy of buckling under a lawless president whose candidacy was foundationally based on a verifiable lie. As well as links to sources I've referenced, we'll leave a contact link to reach the show in the description section below. I'd love to hear from you.